So what was that moment like when you finally knew that you were in the group and you met the other girls? Like, did you all get along initially?
There were only 3 singers in the Pussycat Dolls, and a lot of people don't want to hear that. We're paid $500 a week. We were struggling. There were times where we were really struggling. You not only slave labored us, okay? We were put through severe trauma that we will never recover from. Girls had to have forced and I was a doll, and I made you millions of dollars because my voice is on those records. So
Yeah.
stop. I see what you're doing. Do not play that game with me. I have receipts.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back to Let's Get Into It podcast hosted by me, Sloan. And today we are joined by Kaya Jones. How are you?
Hi, I'm so excited.
I am so excited. So Kaya is a singer and a model, and she's most well known for her role in the Pussycat Dolls. But before we get into that history, I want to acknowledge that you recently dropped a single, Breathe Into Me, which is beautiful.
Thank you.
But about 20 years ago, you joined the Pussycat
Yes.
Dolls, and that's a very different vibe. So before we get into like your joining of the group, were you always into like singing and performing?
Oh my gosh, we were just having this conversation the other day with some family on how I joined into the music industry. So, no, I wanted to be a dancer. I loved dancing. I saw Whitney Houston at the Super Bowl. I was 6 and I was like, okay, I want that. And then I heard Nina Simone the next year. And so every day for 7 years, I would like pray at the foot of my bed and be like, dear Jesus, one day you're going to give me a voice like Miss Whitney Houston. I would say this all the time. And I just really wanted that anointing. I wanted that voice. And no one in my family sings. Nobody. Everyone's like either law or medicine. My mom is the one that's really beautiful. She's the artist. She paints. She's very whimsical. She's like, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? All of that. So I never really had those immediate aspirations. I figured, well, I want to do that, but I'm probably going to go to med school. And then when my stepfather, due to incarceration, that's when I was like, okay, I got to help mom, and started working at a local restaurant, bar, eatery. So I would serve sandwiches, get drinks, those kinds of things. And then start singing at karaoke bars in order to learn how to sing because I couldn't afford vocal lessons. And and that then led me into the music industry. But it was not like, oh, I want to be this. I wanted it, but I didn't think that was possible, if that makes sense.
So when you were serving or doing the karaoke bars, like where were you based?
I was based in Canada for a brief period of time because we lived in Las Vegas. So we lived in Las Vegas. My father went to federal prison. Okay.
What do you go to prison for?
You're not going to believe it. It's what people do every day right now and make millions of dollars.
Selling weed?
No, you're so funny. No, my dad, he started 1-900. He sold the company and the contact list. And in the state of Nevada in 1993, selling your contact list was illegal. And so Janet Reno came down and was just like, and she made an example of my father, and they tried to turn it into this massive thing that he was like this person he wasn't. And he was like, if I fight this, I could be looking at 20 years. I'm going to take a plea. But that affected my life. At that point, then we, moved back to Canada, my mom, and then we started taking care of my grandmother. And Canada was where I was born, and my father's American, my biological father. So I've always been kind of like boom, 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 moving back and forth. But once my career really took off in music, I never returned back to Canada because it just, for me, was like, I have that warmth to Canada because, yes, family's still there, all of that. But I really felt rooted in what I had to offer the world here in America. And it's who I am, and it's part of my heritage, my dad being Native American. And so just feeling like I wanted to not go backward and stay forward in where I was being assigned, where I was being sent.
So social media wasn't huge back in 2003. So did you find like a Craigslist ad? Like how were you approached to join this group?
Oh my gosh. So I had bombarded a tour bus, met Eminem, D12, all these guys, get signed to R. Kelly, signed in a deal with R. Kelly. At that point, Aaliyah dies August 22nd, 9/11 happens, deal goes cold. I auditioned for Capitol Records, get out of my R. Kelly deal. So I've had my a career in music. Maybe that's kind of why by the time I got to the dolls, I was like, no, like this is not, no bueno. So I get to Capitol. I'm being developed as a punk rock artist. I'm like, I'm not a punk rock artist. This is not who I am. You know what? Let me go and figure out who I am. And I still really wasn't sure who I was. I was working at BCBG, wanted to do music, couldn't figure out how to get a manager, what I was going to do. I was kind of just bouncing around, 17, not sure. And then MTV comes on, and it's Gideon Yago from MTV News. And he's like, Pussycat Dolls are having an open call audition. For more information, go to mtvnews.com. And I did, saw that there was an open call in Burbank at Center Stage, and was like, I got to get there. And my girlfriend, Denora Sharp, she's like, you know what? I can drive you. And she drove me and left me there. Like, peace. And I'm like, wait, from Vegas. And I'm like, well, how am I getting home? And she's like, girl, you are home. You got to get this. So I just kind of went into this like mode of like, there's no getting out of this one. You've got to show your best, do your best, and win the position, which was hard because there were 2,000 girls there.
Yeah, that's daunting. Before we talk a little bit more about the dolls, let's talk briefly about R. Kelly, because, R. Kelly has found himself in a lot of trouble. Did you have any inkling of his creepiness when you worked with him?
No. And that's actually one of the things that's really hard and strange for me to compartmentalize, because I've heard all of the allegations. Not at all. I never even saw him smile. He was so stern. No, seriously. Like, he would have me do drills when I was singing, because he did everything to tape. So it wasn't like comping vocals. Like now we can go snip, 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 snip and put the vocals together. And if people don't understand that, that means like we do line by line. So you think that we did the whole song in one take. Really, it's done word by word, line by line. Then the producer puts it together with the engineer. We study it, train ourselves to understand what we executed, and then you tour doing exactly that. So he didn't do it that way. He did record. So that meant tape. That meant when it started, you had to start well and finish well, or again. And so he would do, 100 takes until it was right with me, to the point where my throat would bleed. I would go home. So he was more of a drill sergeant. He was not sweet or sensitive, or, you know what I mean? Or any kind of flirty with me. He was like, boom, 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 get it done. You got to do this. It was so stern. And never saw a flirt and anything like that. And I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot in this business. I never saw it. And that's kind of why it's really hard, because I'm like, when did he do it? And was it in between when we were working? And I did see, people coming to and from the studio, but nothing that we were worried about. So that's what's really hard for me to grasp, is that something like that could have happened so close to proximity. But now kind of walking through that in a different way, in a different arena of the music industry, anything is possible,
Yeah. Even it makes me think of the Danny Masterson. Recently, we had Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis over here, completely defending him. And it's like, you really don't know who, someone is when they're not right in front of you. They could be a total evil monster behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. We really don't.
So what was the turnover time whenever you went to the audition in Burbank? How long did it take for you to figure out that you were going to be selected?
Day one was 2,000 girls, wheedled down to 200 and dancing alone. We weren't even singing yet. And I was just kind of like, I'm more of a singer than a dancer, because I am. And I think people now realize there are singers, dancers, and dancer-singers in the Pussycat Dolls. And that's okay. We were a collective, right? But it wasn't my forte to be this awesome dancer. I was a good dancer. I was a great singer. I was a better singer than I was a dancer. And I would say the same for Nicole and Melody. So that was kind of, oh gosh, I got to get to that point where I could do what I know how to do well. And that was scary, because you see girls that are beautiful, like just eliminated. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. And then they got down to the 200, and everyone, take a break. And if you packed a lunch, and I didn't, so I didn't eat. I was just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to sit here. And then they brought us into rooms to sing. And then by the end of that night, 9 p.m., they had eliminated us down to the top 19. And I was in the top 19. Yeah.
Do you remember what you sang for them?
Yes, I do. I sang Fallen, Alicia Keys.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Ron Fair stood up and he dropped an F bomb. He was like, "Halla effing Lulia, a girl that can sing." And he stood up, he brought me over to the piano and he started playing. And I understood at that point, the years of training with R. Kelly, this is now where I get to do what I know how to do. And I felt confident in that moment. I was like, okay, so I think they think I'm okay, and they did, and they narrowed it down to the top 20, which is the top 19. Really, it's the top 19. It wasn't the top 20, it was top 19. And they gave us 2 sheets of paper. I still have the paper, and it had all of the different singers and songs you had to pick from for the next day. And I had nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, no charger on my phone. Like, I was in bad shape. I was like, what am I going to do? And I sat on the stoop of center staging. I thought I was going to sleep there for the night. That was the plan. I was like, I'm going to sleep here. That's what's going to happen to me. And I sat there, and this beautiful Black woman with an afro who was in the room when we were auditioning. I didn't know who she was, but she was the editor of Allure magazine and Jane magazine. And she winds down her window and says, "Sweetheart, do you need a ride?" And I didn't want to not take a ride, getting somewhere to at least a phone where I could call people I knew in LA. So I was like, total, yes, please. And she was like, "Where are you staying?" I didn't have anywhere to stay, but I didn't want to sound like I didn't have it together. Just insecure and being young and wanting to still pretend that you're super confident when you're totally not.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, I'm staying at the Standard on Sunset." And she drove me there. And in the car ride, she said, "They really like you and a girl, Melody. You guys are really special. And so no matter what happens, you need to know you got to keep doing this music thing because you're good. You got to keep going, and no matter what happens." And I was like, okay. So I kind of knew they liked me, and I didn't know who Melody was, but I was like, okay, I got to figure out who she is when I get to the audition tomorrow. And the audition was the next day. And so I get to Standard. They have phones in the front that actually work. Call my friend Catherine, who's in Santa Monica. She came and picked me up, stayed with her, went to the audition the next day. And from there, they narrowed it down to the top 3 girls. And at that point, it was myself, Melody Thornton, and a girl named Tiffany Baldwin. A lot of people haven't heard about Tiffany Baldwin. So she was this fiery, gorgeous redhead. And from there, champagne toasting, "Oh my gosh, you're a Pussycat doll," but not really realizing they put us up in a hotel. They fly us all home wherever we need to go. Melody went back to Arizona. I went back to Las Vegas. Not sure where Tiffany went. And we were waiting on a call to find out, because they were going to do now invitation only auditions where girls in the industry that are known. So even though I'd had opportunity, they have to be submitted by an agent or manager as an invitation. I had asked managers that I knew, and they said, "We don't think they'll pick you." That was kind of, yeah. They were like, "No, I don't think you're their cup of tea." They sent other girls who didn't make it to the end. So it worked out for me in the end. So I get home, I'm waiting. They finally call me, Melody, and I'm thinking Tiffany. She called me and was like, "Did you hear anything?" And I just didn't want to break her heart. I was like, "No, I didn't." And she, I guess, never got a call back. I don't know what that reason was. Me and Melody flew out. Then it was Anna Maria and a girl named Shalom. And Anna Maria was a part of Pop Stars with Nicole. And she's actually, I think, the one that told Nicole about that next audition. So in walks Nicole. Now it's these 5 of us who then, and I remember some of the other women were kind of upset about that. Like, well, why is she walking in the final hour? Yeah, she auditioned. They loved it. Then the 5 of us had to audition for industry only. And that was when we were now down to the top 3. So.
And then, so what was that moment like when you finally knew that you were in the group and you met the other girls? Like, did you all get along initially?
So me and Melody, actually, our hotel rooms had like that door in between. So we kind of spent time together right away. Me and Nicole were best friends. Yeah. We were super close because we had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And that means a lot of the singing and the things that people don't want to hear as fans. Like, when Nicole said she did a lot of the heavy lifting, she wasn't lying. But there was other girls who did, myself included. And when I left before the launch of that album. And so they don't want to admit there's another voice on those songs, but that's why the first album doesn't sound like the second album, because I was on that and I did my work, and that's okay because I'm doing this now. but be honest and truthful if we're all coming forward to support one another. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I haven't had the support from the women, is because it's a house of cards that if you actually admit there was a girl who really sang, who helped a lot of the heavy lifting, when in fact a lot of them lip sank to what I did. And that's a fact. There were only 3 singers in the Pussycat Dolls. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's the truth.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's totally valid. For the first album, were you paid for your vocals being used?
No, so we were hired cast members. In fact, we were paid $500 a week. I still have my paycheck stubs because I know people wouldn't believe me. We were hired cast members. We had no rights to anything. It was owned by Robin.
Yeah,
Robin
Robin
Anton.
Antin. I wanted to talk about her.
Oh boy. Oh boy. She owned the group. And she was the one who envisioned the group. And that was hard too, because when we came in as singers, myself, Melody, and Nicole, there was already a tribe of girls and they were sisters. Here we were coming in and we were not. And so, but we were coming in because we could do something they couldn't. And they were part of this because they created something that we hadn't. So here we were, trying to make, and I make sense of it now as an adult. I'm like, wow, if we could have just understood we were stronger together, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
But at the time you're thinking like, well, I wanted this and I'm better at this and da 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 da. And that becomes difficult when you already have a very different, difficult dichotomy of a structure that's not a normal music structure. Music structure is usually you're an artist, you're a band, you get signed, boom. This was a joint venture between Universal proper and Robin Antin, not the girls itself. The girls are hired cast members and were disposable and interchangeable at any time.
So can you briefly explain to the people who haven't heard of Robin Antin, like what is her role here? So was she like, I guess a
Robin,
producer, the manager? What was her role?
she did all of it. She envisioned the look for a lot of the girls. She created the Pussycat Dolls with 2 other members of the Pussycat Doll, girls. There were a bunch of dancers. They created this idea, this concept. She copywrote it, patented, trademarked. She did what she needed to do, and she became the owner. But there were a lot of girls that kind of helped influence that, I think, from what I know. And she was just the business mind. She was the business mind behind it. She knew what she wanted, and she was very driven. She was very difficult and very tough, but very good at her job. Like most people who are good at their job, they're sometimes hard to deal with.
Yeah. Was she like, did she kind of play like dictator? I mean, was she the one that decided that you guys get $500 a week?
I don't know if that was from her decision. I would think that that was probably accounting for the record company, maybe. Um, but when it came to any of the money, we didn't get paid for per show. Maybe she did. I remember there were arguments at times with different people in regards to that because we wanted to be paid more. We needed it. We were struggling. There were times where we were really struggling. And I mean, it's like, here's your career, here's your dream.
Yeah. I mean, so she's said that you weren't
Mhm.
ever an official member of the group.
I know. You know what? I have a lovely record contract that says that I was. And so shots fired. Why hasn't she sued me? You see, she likes to sue everyone who's talked to me because she knows that and not the smaller people that have talked to me, the big conglomerate people. And I say this because I see what you're doing. And now at 39 years old, nearly 40 years old, do not play that game with me. I have receipts and I will put you to shame because I will show that you not only slave labored us, okay? We were put through severe trauma that we will never recover from. Girls had to have forced abortions, and I was a doll, and I made you millions of dollars because my voice is on those records. So
Yeah.
stop. Like it's lunacy. So that's kind of why I'm just like, this is crazy to me. This is so crazy. Like there's proof of me singing. That's
So
why it's strange. I don't get it. I don't know, but I pray for her because somewhere something happened to her where she felt she needed to be mean to us, to control us. And I pray for her. I really do, because at the end, she's God's child too. And I don't hold or harbor any ill will to her. I did for a long time. She rented free space in my mind for years. And I had to just be like, you know what? Let it go and forgive her. forgive her. And that was hard. There were days where I was like, I don't want to forgive her, but I had to, because someone conditioned her to be that way. Hurt people hurt people. They don't just become that way. And if I really am practicing what I'm preaching, then I have to be loving and kind, even to those that want to slander or say whatever they want to say. And I think I triggered so fast to say what I said. May I add that there was an article, if you can find it, and if you can't, I have a copy, so don't worry, I can send it to you. There was an
Okay.
article that came out. So right after the Vegas shooting, I had the #3 single in the country,
Mhm.
behind Taylor Swift and Pink. It was called What the Heart Don't Know. And, I get invited by John Rich from Big and Rich to come to Route 91 to perform before, what became one of the worst mass shootings in American history. I'm performing on stage. We leave, mass shooting occurs. I'm all over the news the next day, all over the news. And heartbreaking why I would even be in the news. But of course, that exact week, now that I'm trending and in the news, she was there and the shooting, Pussycat Dolls are doing a reunion. And it was a press release that was put out by, I'm pretty sure, who runs the dolls, which is none of us, okay?
Mhm.
That the Pussycat Dolls are coming back together. And it was picked up by Cosmopolitan. And that's when I said, you didn't even call me to ask. You've pretended like I was never a part of this. But now that I'm trending, you're going to use what I went through to relaunch what you already made so much money. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I said, you know what? No, I'm not gonna just be like, okay, you know what? I said, Twitter, here we go. And at that point, I just went, this is the truth, because I wanted people to finally hear what I knew I walked through and I felt I was never going to be able to speak on. And I just owned it and walked through it. Had no idea at the time there were other women in the industry that had been fed up from other people, Harvey
Mhm.
Weinstein and this one. And the next thing I knew, it was like a Me Too movement. I'm like, I didn't even know I was part of a Me Too movement. I was just saying what felt was like it. How could you do that? How could you use 58 dead people to talk about the dolls? And you didn't even call me. You didn't even text me. In fact, you tried to belittle my involvement. And so, because it says in this article, Nicole Scherzinger, Kai Jones, Melody Thornton set to rejoin. And so, where did they get that from?
Oh, wow. So they just she used the CEO of the search engine optimization CEO. Yeah, just essentially your name was trending. So they decided to throw it in that article so that article would hop on to whatever is
And I
trending.
just felt like I had been used enough.
Yeah.
I had been used enough. And that's okay. Everyone in business utilizes or uses people. Some do it better than others. Has the dolls helped my career? Of course, because I wouldn't be here talking to you if it hasn't. But did I help the dolls? Of course I did. I helped with that sound, which is why when I left the dolls, it was really hard, because then it was like, well, who are you? And then everything I did, it was like, oh, you sound like the Pussycat Dolls. Well, of course I would, because I was a part of that. And then who am I? So then I was constantly given the same kind of music, and I didn't want that. I was ready to release the energy. Was the beginning of me talking about that inner light, that power. That was my way of talking about God. By the time I got to Rise of the Phoenix, it was like, okay, through the ashes, maybe they'll start to see I'm trying to talk about God. And so it was always these steps of trying to talk about what had saved my life, because when I walked away from the Pussycat Dolls, I was also walking away from Nick Carter, that was my boyfriend. And people don't know that. I was in this massive relationship with Nick Carter, and he was having these accusations of rape, and all of these things
Yeah.
were going on, okay? And beating Paris Hilton, and all of this drama. Nobody knew that. Nobody knew that I was going through drama in the dolls, and at the same time walking through a traumatic, horrific breakup when I had to leave him. And I was not welcomed in Hollywood. And I remember when my record Hollywood Doll was first played in Hollywood, and that was Shishi LaRue. That was the gay community that finally said, we know what's up and we'll support our girl. And they did. And that's kind of also why it's been so hard with so many of my friends and family in the gay community, becoming more and more vocal about my conservative beliefs and structure, where they're like, "You've changed." And I'm like, "I still love you. I
Mhm.
haven't changed because I'm not God. I can't judge anyone. I mean, I'm a sinner. I'm Barabbas. I've had forced abortions because of the music industry. So who am
Mhm.
I to judge you? I just want to be happy and live in this grace that I found. And I want to share that with the world. And that's all it is." So yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a
Yeah.
journey.
Well,
Yeah.
Nick Carter and I actually had a pretty bad feud back in December. His wife was messaging my father. They were trying because my father and I have the same name. So they were trying to get to me, messaging him. My dad was sending pictures of guns to them saying, like, come on over here. And it was so bad because I made a video about some of the accusations on
I
Nick
love
Carter
it. Oh my
and
God.
it did really well. So it got him really upset. So like he and when you said his name, I was like, oh, he's like one of those only people out there that I really have had gone at it with. But he
No,
would have
I was
sued me
close
if
with
I
Aaron. I became very close with Aaron. So Aaron
yeah.
was like my brother. I took that death horribly hard. I'm still not over it. Um, he was just awesome. And he knew who people were and he stood up for who he was and he got belittled for it. He
Mhm.
really did. And I just, that's why I want to, if I can change the world, it's to love people so that maybe that love can just trickle more into an industry that's filled with really hateful, evil stuff. And I
Mhm.
don't believe it's the person, I believe it's spiritual. So when I look at a situation, I'm like, "Oh, I don't hate Robin or I don't hate Nicole. It's spiritual. If they're walking in this alignment with this wicked way, which any of us can, we're
Mhm.
susceptible to it." So it's a daily process of like, I'm going to choose love. I'm going to choose love. And that's hard because there are times where, you know, you
Yeah.
don't want to choose
It's
love.
all
You're like,
temptation. I totally get it.
yeah. So, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but I'm not surprised because I know some things.
Yeah, he chose that path, the darker
Yeah.
path.
Yeah. If you knew how that breakup even happened, I had to choose between him and God. That was actually the choice.
Mm.
And that was the saddest day of my life. It wasn't he hit me, it wasn't he cheated on me, it wasn't he was mean. It was nothing like that. And so you love somebody, but they basically tell you, "I need you to be this way for me or nothing." And I was just like, "I can't do that. Like that goes against my my faith. My
Mhm.
religion actually says that that's like the worst of the worst thing. Like I can't do that. I can't and I won't."
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I'm glad that you're super aware of like your spiritual side because a lot of people sometimes in Christianity they don't recognize the spiritual aspect of it as
Right.
far as like the darkness and such. I mean, was there a moment and this is kind of a out there question, but like
Mhm.
Illuminati like putting
Oh my
writing your
gosh.
name in the book like when you just said this I was like, "Oh my gosh, did Nick Carter like try to make her sell her soul and that's why she couldn't?" Do you think that type of stuff is real?
Do you see my face? I'm like, um, yeah, there's not, so it wasn't anything spoken. It was that you're put in situations to do things that are really, really wicked.
Mhm.
And like everyday average people, if I was to even explain it, would be like, so much so that I've never talked about it because I felt people would judge what I had walked through and be like, "Why were you with someone like that? Or why were you in an industry like that? Or why were you working with people like that?" I mean, telling someone you have to get rid of your child when you're pregnant, that's sacrificing your child for fame. That's
Mhm.
putting your kid on an altar. And you can say that that's satanic. You can say it's ritualistic. You can say it's selfish, it's self driven. There's nothing, the thing about having a child is it's a
Mhm.
selfless act where you're putting your baby before you. And I was never allowed to do that. And so, um, yeah, I was put in some situations that were pretty wicked. I remember one specific time I had done an interview and they had asked me, "What do I think it means?" It was Tommy Lahren. She's like, "What does it mean to be a conservative?" And I was like, "I don't really know. I mean, I didn't really see myself as conservative per se, but I said, I support our veterans, our military. I voted for Trump, and yeah, I pray to Jesus. And I remember the heat that ran through my body because it was the first time on camera I said out loud, like, who I pray to. And I remember that day I get a phone call and it's people in the industry. And they're like, yeah. So it was one person, but others were with him in that room. And he said, you can't walk that back. And I said, what do you mean? And I'm thinking the Trump stuff.
Mhm.
100%. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, 'cause they hate him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, it's Trump. That's what I was thinking. It's Trump. And he's like, the Jesus thing. And I was like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, you've planted your feet. You can't walk that back. And that's when I realized, okay, so this is not just what I feel is good, bad, and indifferent. This is legit. And I saw people in the industry really sell their soul, change. When I say
Mhm.
change, I mean become something else. I saw someone in the dolls do that. I saw
Mhm.
another very big pop star who was a dear friend for many years. And I'm always praying for her because she grew up knowing Jesus. So I'm like, come on now, you're going to get her, Lord. You're going to get her. I pray for her all the time. Yeah, there were moments where I felt like in the industry, it was the Lord that really compelled me to get out of that group. He told me I wasn't going to survive if I stayed. And in prayer, I was like, I can't, I just feel like I'm being bombarded. Like I don't know if I can come out of this. I don't know how I'm going to get out of it. I'm scared. You're working with people that are scary people. Like
Mhm.
they're not like, oh, we'll just let you walk away and you can sing again. And it's like, no, you won't be able to sing again. And so
Yeah.
is that scary. So I was like, God, I need prophetic instruction on how I'm going to do this without it stopping me from singing ever again. And that's why when I heard of Simone, right, from the other girl group that was created by the same creator, I remember really good friend of mine. He said I we were filming that day, and Gabriel said to me, he said, "Did you see that thing about Simone? And I just wanted to ask you, are you okay?" And I said, "They caught a weak bird."
Mm.
That was my response. And he said, "That's your response? Like you're not shocked?" And I said, "No, because I was a weak bird." And so when you're a weak bird, that can kill you.
Yeah.
That can kill you because if you don't have anyone to call, if you don't have a faith, if you don't have a belief, if you don't have a way, there are people that don't feel anything. They just, I'm good with that, whatever. But I'm not that girl. I'm like super sensitive, like super intuitive, super feely. Like, oh, I get a bad, something's off. Like, I actually get viscerally responsive to traumas or things when people are going through it, which is why I'm right away when I heard it, I was like, yeah, I remember being like that. There were days where I was like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Like this, like I'm fat, I'm not good enough. Kill your baby, you're making this, sleep with that one, that's not good enough. You get sent home in a car with a man that you don't want to be with multiple times,
Mhm.
have to push him off of you all the time. You're singing for girls who can't sing, but they're wanting to pretend that you're not really a part of it. It was like, what am I doing? What
Yeah.
am I doing? I was like, that's why when I see what like everyone's like, I'm worried about Britney. And I'm like, actually, I'm not, because here's the thing. She's living her best life, doing exactly what she did when she was on stage in her home in front of a camera. And guess what? She's finally doing what a 15-year-old would do without anyone really being on her back. She's finally getting to do that. And so that's going to take time and it's going to be a process because I went through that to feel that power again that you can then now walk in the direction you need to. And she might be there for a minute, but don't worry, she's gaining her strength because when you're
Mhm.
coming out of that kind of trauma, you're never told. I mean, I went and got tattoos because I was always told that you can't, as a pussycat doll, I wasn't allowed to have my belly button ring. Take it out before a show. Take it out right now, or you're not walking on stage. And okay, I got to take it out. I got to take it out. Like you're constantly. I wasn't allowed to wear nude lips on stage. I had to wear red. Now I love red, but at the time, I was young. It was like, you look like a playmate. Take it off. Midnight phone calls about what I ate. Everything was just constantly. You're constantly just controlled.
Yeah.
They even knew who was in my home. And that was the weird one. The weird one is when you get like a phone call. Mind you, they give you your phone And you get a phone call and it's like midnight. And it's like, hi, we want to talk about, the trip tomorrow. And like, okay, let's go over it. Oh, well, when your guest has left.
You're like, who's here?
What, honey? What? It's like, what? What do you, how do you know that? How do you know that? How do you have such information
Mhm.
about my life? And it's because you're a commodity, and that commodity has value. Do I understand it to a degree, to the measure that I walked through it? Absolutely not. Do I think that that would get away now? I think it's people now are starting to be like, heck no, the industry is really changing. And
Yeah.
that's exciting. However, there's a lot of darkness coming out. And that's even more so where I'm like, shine your light bright, 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 because this is getting, I've never seen where it's been full out satanic. Like it's always been hidden.
Mhm.
Now they're not even hiding. So I'm just like, well, finally, I could finally be
Yeah.
like, see, you know what I mean? So it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like just thinking about cult behavior. They will like pretty much spy on these people to gather information on them. So when you do want to turn away from them or not do what they say, then they have the information to then use against you. So do you think whenever you hear artists like VMAs thanking God, or I remember I saw Beyonce performing, she was thanking God at the end. You confessed, that you prayed to Jesus. That was very
Yeah.
specific. Do you think that they are speaking on like another type of God?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. I don't know their heart. Could
Mhm,
be. Um, you know, there are many gods. There are
mhm.
many gods. There's only one God who's like the superior above all gods, right? And so as a believer, like this is going into Rosh Hashanah, I follow Jesus. And so people are like, well, are you a Jew for Jesus? Are you messianic? Are you rabbinic? And it's like, no, I follow Jesus's Bible, which was a Torah, the first 5 books. He carried it to Tanakh, which is the Nevi'im and the Ketuvim, the minor and minor prophets, the Holy Scriptures, the Psalms. And then the New Testament is really his life, then documented, which is 85% of the Old Testament repeated. So I follow the high holy days. I follow what Jesus says to do, walk like him. He's the doorway, walk through it and follow him. So for me, it's like, yeah, I mean, God could be many things to many people. Some people think yoga is their God. Some people think their money is their God. Some people say their career is their God. So for me, I'm like, I feel like I was totally born at the right time finally in my life. But there was a period of my life where I felt like I didn't fit. I
Mhm.
couldn't say the truth. I couldn't speak my mind. I couldn't be honest. I had to pretend and not really embrace who I am. And that was more hard than now, even though I get more love and hate now.
Mhm.
I can finally be honest. And it's those that haven't been honest that are now receiving a lot of the, well, what, well, wait. And people like yourself that really are doing journalism, proper
Mhm.
journalism, which is why I love all of your content. I love what you're saying. I love that you're willing to go there,
Yeah.
because there were people that at one time they used to go there and then they got really big and people started pouring in. And then they were like, well, now I'm going to favor Curry because, Curry favor, I should say, with this one because they became my friend. So they became friends with a lot of celebrities and started to manipulate the words in order to frame their friend. When the truth of the matter is, the truth is just the truth, whether you like it or you don't, you know? That's like me trying to not be honest about the other women being talented. They are, but there's also the truth of what we went through. When they decide to, I'm here whenever they decide to tell the truth. But that would kind of, I think that would change the dichotomy of how people see them if they really knew all of the details. So it's really good to just kind of pretend. Like,
Yeah.
if that makes
Easier to get by.
it's easier to get by.
But I totally know what you mean though, because I mean personally, I was very quiet in school, super bullied. I came out at 14. I had a hard time with my sexuality, so I was always so fearful. And then at one point, I was like in my life, I was like, why am I scared anymore? And now I just have this like I kind of feel like I am on a godly journey in the sense that I have this protection over me
Yeah,
doing these things, and it's
yeah,
definitely like when you put your faith into something else, it
yeah,
doesn't feel as heavy on me. So I
yeah,
totally relate to what you're saying there because it's like
yeah.
a lot of people are scared. And even like Blair yesterday was like, oh, like I'm so scared for, the people you talk about and those things. And honestly, I haven't been scared once. Like I just am not
You were
scared.
made for it.
Yeah, I
You
feel like
were
I'm made
made
for
for
this. Like,
it.
and it's so rewarding when you find like your purpose in life. But I want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about your departure from Pussycats. But before we do
Yes.
that, can you just briefly explain the Vegas thing really caught me off? So you were a part of that show where there was a mass shooting in
Mhm.
Vegas. Like, what was that like? What, you were just performing on stage and then you got off after, and then there was this
Yes.
hell on earth.
So yes. So a lot of the footage, I don't know if you pull it up, you can see actually from my cell phone. And my best friend had my cell phone. So she was doing it with her phone and my phone. And then I took my phone back and started to film a little bit from the crowd, but she was off to the side filming. So a lot of the where you see the lighters and everyone lighting up their phones and lighters, that where we're singing God Bless America, that was when I was on stage. I was on stage with Big and Rich, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy song. Like, so I was on stage with them and they invited me because I had the #3 record in the country. And it was like, you do a lot of stuff with the veterans, like come up because we're going to do this tribute where they give a shot to a couple of the guys for serving, and it's like a playful moment in their set. And so I was like, and they do a set very different. They want their friends coming on stage. It was cool. So I was like, oh wow, this is cool. And then we leave. And as we're leaving, I realize, wait, this is DJ Silver coming on with Aldine. So DJ Silver who's now Jason Aldean's DJ. He does everything with Jason. He was my DJ like back when I left the Dolls, and I was doing tours in like Texas and like, all the like South Carolina, North Carolina, all these little shows, Atlanta. And there's DJ Silver, and he's like, "Oh, me, my wife, and the baby." And I was just like, "What? What? Awesome! I'm so happy he's here with Aldine." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Come watch the set." And I wanted to stay, so I was gonna stay. And my friend was like, "No, let's go, because John is gonna be having this big party at the Redneck Riviera down the street, and everyone's gonna come over anyway. Aldine's gonna come. Everyone's gonna come anyway." And I was like, "You know what? Yeah," because they were the last set of the festival, so we were the second to last set. And so I was like, oh, okay. And it's a good thing our bus, because we were in Big and Rich's bus, we pull out. And it was a good thing we did because all the buses were shot. And luckily, most of the people were on stage or outside. They weren't inside of the bus. So that was that was crazy. That was the crazy thing because one, I'm from Vegas. That's my home state. So that was like, how could this happen? How could this happen in my home state? One. And two, are we safe as entertainers? Because now we're wanting people to come and take part in our experience, but what's going on in this world where I never used to be scared to get on stage. And now that's why I became like firearms, got into firearms, got into a lot of stuff to learn so that I felt safe and empowered as a young woman in this world that's changing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So you weren't actually at the scene when the attack happened, but can you describe, so you're
No.
either at this party or on the bus, like what was that moment like when you first learned? I mean, I feel like it would be
Oh my
just
gosh.
such a,
Well,
like
we
I'd
were
want to
like,
faint.
I'm not kidding. We were like 10 minutes down the road, but you have to understand the moment that shooting happened, there were explosions and things that happened in other areas of Vegas. And there was a lot of chatter and a lot of like confusion going on. So people were like, oh, there's this over here and there's that over there. And remember, the shooter was shooting at the airport. So because of that, there was, they were thinking that the gas tank at the airport was going to explode. So they locked everything down. The thing about Vegas that's really amazing is that they were able to, turn off every key. So if you weren't already in your room, you weren't getting in your room. And then they moved everyone into ballrooms to isolate, to figure out who was who and what was what. And I've never seen my city more like a ghost town in my life, where it's like the middle of Manhattan where it's busy. And then all of a sudden it was like, no. And we were bunkered down at the Redneck Riviera for 3 hours until SWAT came and cleared and allowed us to leave. But we had an off-duty FBI agent. He was on his honeymoon and he was in the bar with his wife. And he said, is anyone carrying a firearm? And of course it was the musician. Of course it's John. John Rich is like, I have one. John had to make sure he was really who he said he was. He showed who he was, his credentials. One of John's securities cleared it, and he took John's gun and sat at the door on his knee, guarding the door for those 3 hours that we had to
Ugh.
wait until we knew we were safe. And it was it was scary.
So while you're in there for the 3 hours, were people like playing music and having drinks and having a good time, or was everyone
No,
just so scared, right?
no, we were. I mean, I for sure was drinking. I was not this like uber Christian that I am now, where I don't even drink anymore. I have wine every now and then, but I'm
Yeah.
like such a good girl now. So at that time, I was like, see, this is why it's important. You need to gun up. You need to know what you're doing. You need to
Mhm.
protect yourself. I was doing a live actually on my Facebook, because I was scared.
Mhm.
And I was keeping people updated because people were like, "Are you safe? Are you clear? Are you safe? Like, we see what's going on. Like, are you?" Because it was all over the news at that point. And and I got death threats right after that. That's when I got scary death threats, and that's when I had to really start changing my life. And then that was right after that. That's when the press release came out about the dolls, and I think I became a different girl after that shooting. That was the one of the most traumatic events in my life. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm not a little girl anymore. And you got a lot of money from me. You made a lot of money from all of us. We don't see any residuals on anything. We don't get paid on anything. Those songs rotate every day and someone's making it. We're not. And what little, credibility I had with you guys, you're trying to take that away. So no, you're not going to use my name because I was part of a horrible night to get people interested in your group. No.
Yeah. So let's go back to the group because one of the reasons I came across your story specifically was
Yeah.
because you called the group essentially like a prostitution ring. So
Mhm.
can you kind of talk about how, I mean, at some point it was probably a good time to be in the group, but then it started to go downhill. What was that downhill like? And I mean, was it
Uh,
really Robin who kind of like pushed you out of that group, or was it also fellow
no, I
band
asked to leave.
members?
I asked to
Mm.
leave. I asked to leave. So, um, I think she knew I was unhappy. A lot of the people knew I was unhappy, um, because there were so many things. There's too many things. I mean, the abortion was one. The, you get a drive to an event, and then all of a sudden, the end of the event, oh, your driver didn't show up, so so and so is going to give you a ride home,
Mhm.
and you're like, okay. But then it's like a guy that's like, trying to flirt or trying to.
Like an executive, like someone who has
Oh, yeah, yeah,
power?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Or there's an executive that jumps on you in the back of a limo
Yeah.
after Divas Live when we're on our way to the plane.
Would you say, like, you were, by definition, sexually assaulted by some of these people?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's I mean, that's so it's, like,
100%.
crazy because you really did, like I'm so proud of you as a person for who you are now, especially going through that because so many people get trapped in that, and then they live in fear forever. I mean, it'd be hard to continue working after being put in that situation and seeing, like, what the industry can be like.
Yeah. Of absolutely, because you're scared. And I think that's the thing is if you're a true artist, whether you're in the world and known or you're in a dungeon, you're still going to create music. You're
Mhm.
still going to make music. So I think I had to just succumb to the fact that I may never get my voice out there and heard because I had a holding period. So there was 3 years that I was not able to sing. Like I had
Oh.
an immediate offer from Capitol Records when I left the Pussycat Dolls because I was signed to Capitol before the Dolls. So Julian Raymond, Andy Slater, who signed me at 16 years old, was like, "Come on, girl, let's get it done." I go over there, and I remember Julian called me and he said, "Jimmy's not letting your voice come out right now because
Why would they do that?
essentially when I was part of that group, I had created and helped that sound.
Mhm.
So I understand it business wise. They're looking at it like we can't have the same sound coming out at the same time and anyone get wind that you were here and then you're pulling focus. And because
Mm.
they were a mega machine, like a lot of money being put into them. So I succumbed and understood, but of course I was like, does that mean I'm blacklisted? What does that mean? What does that mean? I was so scared. And it didn't. It just meant that I had to wait until the Dolls had a second album. And luckily, Nicole's solo album that never came to pass became the Dolls' second album. And that's a true story that people don't know. The Dolls' second album is actually her solo album.
Mm.
And I remember getting that call from a radio guy who was like, I was there, I'm at the table, I hear what's happening. You go. This is go record now. You are clear. And I'm like, what happened? He explained the drama, and I was like, thank God I'm not a part of that anymore. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
it's just too much drama.
Yeah.
Too much drama. Bad energy.
So you were quoted saying, "It feels like you're a slave, literally, to your dream. You have no access to personal thoughts, space, choices, decision. You're owned by a commodity." Can
Mhm.
you've mentioned abortions a few times now. I believe we found an article that said there were 3 abortions that you had gone
Yes.
through. So were in when you look back in hindsight, like, you don't feel like those were your choices to make?
The first one, I was 16 and I
Mhm,
was just signing with Capitol Records, and I didn't have a notion of like what I wanted. I was so young. So it was
mhm,
kind of like I just can't have it.
mhm.
I was so young. I was just signed. I couldn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I was scared. It's different.
Did your mom help you out with that? Like, how did you as a
No,
16-year-old go and do
no,
that?
you can get abortions at 16.
Well, still? I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I
You're
didn't well, I
like,
thought you would have to
no,
have, like, an adult with you or something.
no. I needed no one with me.
Yeah.
No one with me. I
Did
went into
you share it with your family?
I shared it with my mom afterwards, and she was like, I think my mom has always been like my best friend. So I would share things with her. She would keep notes about things that happened to me in the dolls, which had become my journal entries because I can now remember things that I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. My mom was good on keeping track of everything. And so, yes, I shared that with her. In the dolls, I remember I did it in between rehearsal. So
Really?
I knew I was going to be late to rehearsal, but it was the only time they could take me. And I was told to get rid of it. So, all right, just go and get rid of it.
And was that with someone like, not to be TMI, but so the second one, was that with someone you were personally, like, dating, involved with?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So,
yes. And he didn't know.
were any of these instances, like, people that you weren't dating, like, a music executive or something along those
No,
lines?
no, 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 no,
No.
no, no, no. No, this is someone that was signed to the label. This is an artist.
Mhm.
And so, his career, my career.
Nick Carter? No, just
No,
kidding.
actually, no, actually, no.
No.
Um, but I was really scared. I remember being like, what am I going to do? And then when I spoke about it, I was told, get rid of it. You don't, get rid of it.
Mhm. And
So
were
it's
they
like,
supportive of that? Like, were they, like, driving you to go do it, or they're like,
no, no,
"Just
no,
get
no,
this
no. At
done and
that
don't
point,
bring
I
it up."
didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
And so, no, it was just one individual. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this. So actually, none of the girls even knew.
Mhm.
None of the girls knew. Um, and I had to be really secretive. And I started hemorrhaging. I was really sick
Ugh, God.
while I was also having to do a big show
Yeah.
all over television and people and millions of people watching. And I was bloated from the distension of the procedure. And I was then told how fat I looked. And so before I go on stage, while I'm still actively bleeding.
Yeah. So you do talk about, like, I mean, obviously the abortions, that's a big control over your body, but you were in this group in the early 2000s where I feel like that was where when everyone was super thin, there wasn't the Lizzos out here preaching the body positivity. So what was that as
No,
like
there
a
was not.
so
No,
like
there was not.
dating, like, other fellow artists or like seeing male artists, do you think there was definitely a different experience you had being a female in the industry and them constantly commenting on your body,
Yeah,
your weight?
yes. We were constantly, I mean, Nick didn't have a great body. He didn't go
Mhm.
to the gym. I mean, I
Yeah.
used to have to be like, come on, let's go to the gym. He did not go to the gym. I don't know what his situation is now, but at the time he didn't. But guys were just treated differently. Did they have pressures for sure? But as a girl, I mean, we're half naked. So it was like, everyone knows that era. It was Britney, it was Christina, it was many more. It was like the pop superstars. And so we had to fit this. And we were the female girl group that hit at that time frame. The only other one was Destiny's Child. That was
Mhm.
it, other than Spice Girls. And then after us, then came the Danity Kane and all the other things that came after that. But the dolls were like, really was only Destiny's Child. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of other girls out there doing their thing. It was a lot of pressure. And so, and you're made fun of to, mine was my curves. So I was constantly told how fat I was all the time. Midnight phone calls about what I ate. You ate cheese. You're not allowed to eat cheese. What?
Yeah.
Like, and you're being watched what you eat. So then I just didn't eat. And I think Nicole's been public about her bulimia. Yeah, it's very real. Like we were watched. We were watched on what you did, and you had fittings and weigh-ins, and you better be skinny.
So was it Robin who was like spewing this to you guys? Do you remember anything specifically that she said to you that was just like super terrible that pushed you out of the group or that led to you wanting to leave the group?
Hmm. I mean, for sure the baby part, but
Yeah.
I will say, oh yeah, it was in front of Larry Rudolph, Brittany's manager. We were working
Ooh.
with Brittany. And he was coming in to potentially manage us. And it was him sitting there, and and we're excited. We're working with Britney Spears, and we'd just done Divas Live the night before, so we, private airplane, me and Nicole home. The other girls were sent home on a bus. So of course, no shade. Now you're understanding the levels.
Yeah.
Okay. And but we again we sang, so we did a lot of the heavy lifting. That being said, I remember we went across the street to Whole Foods in Santa Monica. We went and got just simple food like fruit and vegetables. Like, we didn't really eat a lot. So yeah, and Robin pointed out in front of Larry and his associates, and Mikey Minden, and like, look at her body. It's just, you're just so fat. You're just so fat. I mean, you don't take care of yourself. Just look at you. It's disgusting. It's just disgusting, And I remember I was just like, I was so humiliated. I was so humiliated because it was in front of a mega manager that we were working with, his number one pop artist in the planet. And I remember he came over to me that night at the end of the show, and he said, I just want you to know, when you're done here, you come find me. Nothing's wrong with you.
Oh, that's actually pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was really sweet. And he actually tried to manage me when I left the dolls, but I told him he wasn't done with his girl, and he wasn't. And so he went back to managing Brittany shortly after that, because an hour meeting, 30 minutes of this hour meeting with this new potential manager for myself, he's talking about Brittany.
Yeah.
And this was when Brittany was not with him. And I just was like, you know what to do with her. You found your girl. Now I need to find someone that understands me that way. And so I felt like though he always wanted her to work a lot, he really understood how to keep her on target, on point. And she was always at her best when she was represented by him. So I don't really have that notion of him being this bad person. I never saw that. He was really respectful, and he was really kind, and he stood up for me. He actually looked at Robin and was like, stop. So he was a different, again, I have this very different version of some of the people in this business. People say Robert Kelly's one way, they said Larry's another way, and I would beg to differ. Both have been really great with me. It's the ones that you don't think that have not. But I will say there were moments like that all the time. I mean, again, when you get calls or told, like, Divas Live, I'm walking underneath the stage, I'm coming up and being told, you look like you have pizzas sewn on your ass. Like,
That's ridiculous.
you know what I mean? Like, I remember and mind you, I'm wearing like this tiny thing, and I'm losing my child, and I'm bleeding, and I'm like already like, oh my God, I feel like I'm not enough. And at that point, I'm like, I'm really never going to be good enough, am I? Like, I'm never going to be good enough for you. And you know what? That's okay. And so then the process was, how was I going to get out of it? And when I was leaving, Rob had actually asked to sign me as a solo artist to be owned by the Pussycat Dolls and to be still under Universal. And I declined. Because I felt that was not, if I was going to stay with Robin, I would have stayed with the Dolls.
Yeah.
So,
did you ever tell her, like, you're just a terrible person, I don't like how you talk to me?
No.
Like,
I know.
no.
I never stood up for myself. I was so like, no, I was so like, I was like a little lamb. I was like a little lamb. Maybe that's why now I'm just like, no, I'm an adult. You can't bully me anymore. You
Mhm.
bullied me for a long time, and not just me. There are girls in that group she bullied too. You don't have a perfect image anymore. Be honest. Get back into the group with your fans so your fans know you're real and legit, and you have a career. You
Mhm.
as an entity, you as a commodity, you as a girl that created that magnitude, because since the girls have gone their ways, that shows you it's not there. The name was not in the dolls, it was in the women. It was the women that were powerful and great. And that's kind of why it was a disconnect from like the Spice Girls. The Spice Girls, you fell in love with the girls.
Yeah.
You fell in love with like, oh, this one and that one and this one's like me and da 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 da, and you felt connected. When the dolls, you really didn't know who was who and what was what, but at the root of it, you loved the music, and you wanted to be one. And so I think if we really understood that we were more of a power to be who we are than to be who this thing is, we would have sustained longer, and we probably would have respected each person in our own lane.
Yeah.
You know,
Are you friendly with any of them?
actually, I every time I see Melody, we're good every time.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
both kind of went through it together, like in the beginning and
Yeah,
everything. So,
actually, Mel saw me outside of a movie theater, and she was like, "You know, I couldn't realize why you left." And then when I saw look at all you're doing, I wish I'd left sooner. She said that. Then when I
oh,
won my Grammy, that's when she was like, "Girl," and I was like, "It's your turn. Come on now, girl, get it together." She is a powerful vocalist. I can't wait for her to just do what she's capable of and not be in the background anymore. Can we just gloat for a second? She's so good. She
yeah.
needs to have her moment because she deserves it, because she's talented. And unfortunately, the people that created us were also involved in Christina Aguilera's career. And that's why I feel like she was kind of like not pushed forward. But Christina is Christina and Melody is Melody. And I think that Melody is a powerful vocalist. And I just can't wait to see what she's going to do, because she never got the glory or the fame. And
Yeah.
I think for what that girl has, and I will never talk crap about Mel, because we were the first two. We were the first two. And I just know she's got many awards in her, and I'm going to be there cheering for sure.
Yeah, well, I think it's great too that I mean, looking at your career, just like in 2019, you got this Grammy with Jason Crab, I
Yeah.
believe, and that's just amazing that you because most people artists they can't even last like a decade. So the fact that you've been able to
Mhm.
reinvent yourself and still be successful in this industry, I mean, kudos to you because I mean, I thought you would have been blackballed to the point where you can't even like
Yeah, right. No.
achieve a Grammy. So that's like
Yeah, you got to be
amazing.
honest. Just be honest. The thing is about being honest. Like, be honest with your fans. Be honest with the industry. And industry loves gratefulness. When you're
Mhm.
grateful, because people know what happens in this game, and when you come back and you're like, "I'm just so grateful that I still have a job. I'm so grateful that I get to sing and be a part of this and make music with you guys again." They're really warm, like unbelievably warm, where they're like, "Oh, I'm so happy you're doing good. I'm supportive." The people now that have come beside me, I'm still shocked. I'm like, whoa! Like even when Jason Crab, it was one of the Rascal Flats were producing that album. Like the
Mhm.
Rascal Flats are a big deal,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking like, oh my gosh! And it was, we think you'd be great for this record, and I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, yeah, we'll do it. First single, the whole album wins a Grammy, but we were the first single for that album. So it just was so sweet. And then realizing, like, because I had actually prayed for that. So that was an answered prayer. I had said to the Lord privately, I said, God, I left the dolls. I'm doing like DJing and singing dance music, and I'm just, my heart's not there. Like, I still want to do dance music, but I just want more meaning. I just want
Mhm.
more meaningful. I want to give a message. I want to change the world. I want to do something with my life. And I just feel like if I'm going to sing, it's got to be more for you and less of me. And I don't know how that's going to happen, but you got to send the people, because I don't know who they are.
Mhm.
I don't know them like at all. I know all these DJs and guys in like Europe and all of that. And I just said, God, you got to bring them to me. A week later, I get What the Heart Don't Know, which went to number 3. 2 months later, I'm in the studio with Jason Crab, and 2 years later, I'm winning a Grammy. And so it was like, whoa, you did it. You did it
Mhm.
because I asked for it. So I think if you ask, you will receive, but you got to speak it into existence. And so I speak life over my life. Like, never, yeah, never bad about people, never life, speak good. That's why I want to see all the girls win. And Nicole, because we were best friends, that was
Mhm.
hard. I want to see Nicole win. And I know what she's capable of. I don't want to see her just doing one part because she's capable of a lot more. And she's a believer. And so I want to see her do great things too. But the girls that, and I see some of them finally getting their voice and they're becoming moms. And I'm like happy for them. I'm really happy
Mhm.
for them. But yeah, I've not really had a warm, like, oh, we're happy or proud of Kai at all. And I think that just speaks to me where their heart's at. So I just kind of
Mhm.
hope that one day, and I think it will happen, where we all admit that we have regard for each other. And I've seen Carmeet, and Carmeet's good. Every time I've seen her, it's been good. But there are people that were closer to Robin than me. So, I feel like the singer girls, which was me, Melody, and Nicole,
Mhm.
we're different. We're the girls that were part of the dolls will always side with Robin. And
Mhm.
the girls that were not, we're not. We won't. And I think you're hearing that in the news with some of the stuff that's happened between Nicole and Robin. And I actually was like finally happy for Nicole, like finally, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Finally, girl, like about time.
So let's finish up by talking a little bit about your faith. But before we get there, I just want to ask, like, because you've been in the industry, do you think that there's like this spiritual like cloud in Hollywood where people are actually achieving success off of like their evil sacrifices, like Doja Cat, like pushing this whole evil, like satanic message, and
Yeah,
with her VMA performances, like, do you think that like people who sacrifice children or do these horrendous things in Hollywood, they are rewarded in some weird spiritual way, the same way like you are,
of
you
course.
doing good, you spreading love, you praying on it,
Of
them
course.
committing these horrendous acts, they are rewarded for it.
Yeah, well, it goes back to scripture, when Jesus was in the wilderness and Lucifer came to him and said, I can make you a king and give you all of this, and just told him all of the things he could give him. And, Jesus's kingdom is not here. Our kingdom is not here. And I think that's where it's less of me, more of him. Just love people. Don't chastise them. Don't judge them. Come with open arms. Spread unity, not division. Spread the message of Jesus. And if I can do that, that will change the world, because people are in pain and people are in darkness and people are going through depression, and the devil is a liar. It doesn't start with someone being a Satanist or someone being you know, um, a devil worshiper or witchcraft, or it doesn't start that way, but it was a seed. It's a seed that's planted in the mind, and it starts to grow into bigger because possession is real. Like the whole point of singing about Jesus, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about him. It's
Mhm.
less of me, more of him. You're talking about you, the power that these things are giving you. It is the antithesis of anti selfless. It's more
Yeah, it's
selfish.
self-worship for
It's self
sure.
worship, correct.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was losing it. I felt like I was losing
Mhm.
my mind. I lost my child. 16, I'm young, stupid, poor choice. Finally, then an ex boyfriend who I thought I could trust rapes me, get pregnant, and wanted to keep the baby. And then him saying, I'm going to take it from you if you have it, lawyer up. And I just kind of was like, well, you know what? I had done it before. I don't want to do this. And that was the hardest one because I really
Mhm.
wanted that child and I knew better. So that's why I'm very vocal about it now, because I want young girls, especially if they're in this industry and they think they know what they're doing. I'm telling you, as someone who was in this industry or still is in a different capacity now, learn from it. Don't do what I did. And I don't think it's that shocking anymore because so many girls have talked about what we've gone through in this business. And it's time that men and women don't take advantage of people anymore in this business. Let's change it for the better. It
Mhm.
can be done. And I think we're seeing that. I think it's a little messy, of course, because you're going to see people get in trouble. And you're going to be like, well, why did they have to do that? Why did Danny Masterson have to do this? Or why did this one have to do that? Or why? Because you're like, they're famous, they're good looking. Like, just because you're famous does not mean you're not a bad person. Just because you're talented, just because you have money. And how many times is it too many times? Like, how many of the dolls have to say they went through something for people to actually go, it happened.
So you identify as pro-life now. Do you believe like the
Yeah.
procedure itself should not be available?
This is actually something, thank you for asking me this question. This is a question that I know because I believe that God allows us free will. And that's hard to say, but as a Christian, I don't believe in murder, right? I don't believe in murder. But I also know that God gives us free will because he's a loving God. So he's not a forceful God. He's not
Mhm.
going to force. You have to choose your life. You have to make choices. This is free will. Now, there are consequences with those choices. That's the conversation we need to have. I would really love a Surgeon General warning for abortion, for women to understand there are spiritual ramifications that are very serious. There are mental ramifications such as PTSD. And then there's actually the physical side of, you know, getting breast cancer, scar tissue, serious other complications. I had a complication and literally nearly went septic. So when I tell you there's things that happen that we have to discuss, instead of this like, it doesn't matter, it's just a clump of cells, it doesn't matter, it's your body, your choice. But it's actually another human's body. And if I fight for human rights and I've spoken out for LGBT and I've spoken out for being a Christian and I've spoken out for all these things, and I've got to speak for those who can't because my 3 babies are in heaven and I will meet them one day. But I chose really poorly. And I hope that more women make a better choice because there's amazing people in this world that want a baby,
Mhm.
and they can't have one. That baby is worth a shot. Give them the fair shot. Give them a shot. Maybe they'll change the world. Maybe we will have a female president one day. Maybe we will have better music. Maybe we will advance in all areas. But if we keep aborting these babies, we're really killing ourselves off. I mean, we're like a parasite at this point. And so that's kind of why I'm like, I don't think it's taking anything away. I guess I think it's beautiful that we've gotten to a point where it's crazy to talk about it,
Mhm.
but I do believe in free will. I don't believe in forcing anything, but I know where I stand. Do I think a woman has a right to make a choice? Yes. Do I agree with the choice of killing a life? No. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm pro gun too. But so do you see what I'm saying? Like if I'm pro firearm, that means if someone comes in my home to try and kill me, I am pro making sure that I'm safe and my family's safe. That doesn't mean I'm okay with going and killing people. So that it's a line. You have to know what that line is before you cross it. I don't believe in condemning young girls who've gone through hell. I know what that felt like. I know what going through an abortion feels like. And when I've gone to colleges and spoken and I see their faces and they're ready to really just attack you when you speak poorly, um, that's when I started talking more, because at the time I wasn't even speaking about that. I was talking about
Mhm.
other things. I was talking about the country, conservative, Jesus, all those things.
Mhm.
And that's when I looked around the room when another conservative speaker was speaking about abortion. And I went, whoa, I have to speak now. I have
Mhm.
to do this, because if I don't do this, you're missing it, guys. You're hurting these girls that are already broken. They lost their baby, and we're parents of dead children, and the murder took place in our body. It's very real. So if we can't love those girls and say, God forgives you, now come on, do the better thing now. To realize what we did, and there's healing that needs to happen, then we can go from there.
I really like that approach though, because I feel like it's smart because like I could have, if you said no, it shouldn't be available, I could have been like, well, you're a hypocrite because you've done this and it's given you an advantage. But I think that's really insightful because there is like, ramifications to every decision. And the
Yeah.
fact that you think you acknowledge the free will and everything, I think that's like, I align with that belief as well because I do think that there's a choice to make out there, and I think taking that away is just I
I
mean,
don't
I it's like true conservatives, they don't want more regulations and more laws. They want to allow
know.
us to make our own choices.
Just be kind. You don't know what someone's going through. Just be kind to the women and the men, especially men who have paid for abortions. You know how many guys I get messaging me and they're like, I paid for one. I feel so bad.
Mm,
And I know I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have made her do it. You know how many of those I've gotten where guys are reflecting and saying, I shouldn't have made her do it? Because God is good at reminding you, you did something you shouldn't have done. That's not a form of contraception. Wear a condom or don't have sex. That is not a form of contraceptive. And that's what we're doing is like, oh, we'll just kill it. But when you see the graphicness and how it's done, and then when I started to learn, I was just like, oh
Mm.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, and I love to see the pop artists that are having babies and doing it boldly. Like when Jessie J, when you're seeing her and when you're seeing girls do it boldly, I'm just like, yes,
So I've got one last question for you and then we'll
yes,
wrap up. And it's kind of random, but I saw that in 2009 you did a solo tour in Iraq.
yes.
Was that scary or what was
Oh my
going
gosh. You know that you're like the first American reporter to actually ask me?
really? Yeah.
What, you know that?
It just
Yes,
stuck out to me. I was
you.
like,
I love you. Um, yes, in 2009, I went over for the MWR or the USO, which is like MWR is kind of like the USO. And I was supposed to do 24 shows in 12 days. That's 2 shows a day, Black Hawk choppers to and from each base. And we got rocket attacked on one of the bases.
oh
So
my
I
God.
lost 4 shows. I only did 20 shows in 10 days. I hold the record during an active war performing for our troops during an active war abroad. And as a pop
Oh,
star, I hold the record. And no one has gotten to ask me because no one has wanted to know. I don't know why, but I think it's really cool because I got to meet all of our men and women, and they serve under both umbrellas. And I got to meet some really great people that just want to be reminded that we love them, and they give a lot to our country. And I'm grateful for those men and women that stand on that wall. I'm grateful for
yeah.
them because I'm not standing on that wall. I'm just so proud of our nation, and I always will be, no matter who is president. No matter
Mhm.
who is president, I'm always going to support our country because I just think it's an awesome thing to be an American, and we have such opportunity that so many people from every other country want to come because look how we live. We have huge cars, we have nice homes. Look
Mhm.
at these things. Come on, people, we got it good. Let's keep it good. You know what I mean? Like when you start to travel the world, you start to realize there's a lot of other things you could be complaining about.
Yeah, and
There's a
we
lot.
love our troops and the fact that you're able to use your gift to give back in some way. I mean,
Yeah,
that's beautiful. That's what everyone like I
I
think would
love our
strive
I love
to
our military.
do. Yeah, no,
I love
likewise.
them.
I couldn't imagine like nobody wants to
Oh
be out there
no.
using that machinery. So the fact that they could do it
No
so that I could
way.
be here and talking to you, like that's
Yeah,
I feel like I
I
am
love
always
it.
supportive of them, you know?
Yeah, so it was a very good tour. Really scary, crazy, awesome. But man, what it was amazing to be in Kuwait, be in Iraq, meet different people. And and that changed my life. And when I came back, I wanted to visit the VA hospitals. I wanted to do more for human rights. I wanted to speak more. It really did change my life. And it was just so rewarding.
Do you have like a book or anything about your life or
We're working on it. It's so funny you're saying that. Yeah, there are a lot of people that have been like, oh, where, and we're like, we're working on it. We're working on it. We have, we do have some things cooking, and
yeah.
we have a joint partnership that's going to be coming out about my representation. We haven't spoken about it yet, but there's things that are happening. So, um, I think people will be happy. There are good people in this business too. There are great people in this business too. And
Yeah.
not everybody's bad. But when you find the good ones, tell everyone about them because they are there and you can change it, you know?
Well, I think that's beautiful. And if you guys want to go and check out more of Kaya's journey, I'm going to list everything below. Go and check out her latest single, and the music video is beautiful. So
We have
go
a
and
new
check
one
it out.
coming because I'm losing
You do?
all this weight. I lost 10 pounds from that video. So
Yeah.
and healthily, not like starving because I like
Yeah.
food. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I love food. No, so the new music video that's coming out is Love is the Answer. We're
Mm.
so excited. That's going to be coming out very soon. That's in October. So
Awesome. Well, I'll link everything below so everyone can
thank
go and
you.
check you out. Thank
Thank
you so much for coming on to my podcast. It was such an honor. And you guys go and check out Kaya, go and support her on social media. I will list everything below.
thank you,
And
Sloan. I love you. I adore
thank
you, and
you.
I'm your biggest supporter. So keep watching him, keep supporting him because we need real journalism. And he's an awesome, awesome journalist. And I just think he's fabulous. I think you're fabulous. So keep being
Thank
fabulous,
you.
keep doing you, and keep just changing the industry and the world.
You too, likewise.
Thank you.
And on that note, thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you in next week's episode. Bye, guys.